Welcome back to the Love You Sew YouTube channel. Today we are going to go through this vinyl hack for the Colleen Tote Bag. It is using the new TPU printed vinyls out there, and I'm going to show you how to get this clean finish on the inside where you do not have any stray seam allowances sticking out, and you will have a beautiful clean finish. Of course, you are going to need your Colleen Tote Bag pattern, which you can find in my shop. You will also need a 12-inch by 52-inch roll of the clear vinyl and then an 18-inch roll of the jelly vinyl accent. You will cut the main exterior, then the bottom. I have used 1.5-inch webbing for the handles. I have my cording and the band. The interior band, which will become the exterior band, is cut in the jelly as well. You will also cut the slip pockets with the measurements as shown. And the interior base is going to be cut to the measurement of the Ultra Firm stabilizer. Additionally, you will also need 4 sets of rivets and a set of snaps. I am using rivet magnetic snaps. You'll also need a hole puncher, matching thread, and awl, and some double-sided tape. With this hack, I'm going to jump around the instructions, so be ready. We are going to jump into the handles to step 54 since we're using 1.5-inch webbing. I've already marked the ends and have laid the cording in between. You can see that I used a pretty thick cording. It happened to be the only one in my stash at 3/8 of an inch, whereas the instructions say to use 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. With this webbing, I think 1/4 of an inch would be great to use. So you can see I've had to break out my narrow presser foot to be able to get to the edge and sew this rolled handle together. You can see I used the yellow head pins to also indicate where the markings on my handles were. This allows me to clearly see where to start and stop the seam since I had closed off the handle. Repeat steps 54 to 56 for the second handle. With the handle set aside, we can now work on the slip pocket. Even though we're working with clear substrates, I knew that we still need some storage, so the slip pocket is a definite must. Take the front of your slip pocket, flip it to the back side, and mark at 1/2 inch. We're going to fold it over and then edge stitch that fold into place as shown. I'm using a Teflon presser foot right now, but with this jelly vinyl, you actually don't even need it. Once you're finished, just wipe away the marking pen that you use. That's the thing with these clear and jelly vinyls, you can definitely see your marking pens. So with both parts of the slip pocket, right sides facing up, finish the bottom edge so that the front slip pocket is enclosed. Set the slip pocket aside. Now with your exterior bands, place them right sides together, clip in place, and sew along each short side, then set aside. Time to start the exterior construction. We are now jump all the way back to step 3 to line up the top long edge of the accent to the bottom long edge of the exterior. We're sewing only at a 1/4 inch seam allowance right now, and then flipping everything to the right side in order to top stitch. Make sure that top stitch is at about 1/8 of an inch in order to secure the seam allowance down. Make sure to repeat on the other side of your bag, and then go ahead and cut out the squares on the bottom accent in order to later box the bag. With right sides together, line up the main panels and sew up that bottom seam. We just jumped and finished step 42. I'm using the double-sided tape on both sides of the seam allowance to help keep it in place as I top stitch through. And if you couldn't tell, I try to keep that double-sided tape out of where I'm going to sew, just to make sure I don't gunk up my needle. So everything has been sewn in place, and I'm using the double-sided tape again, but now to secure what is going to be our base. With this turquoise piece of jelly vinyl, it's just going to act as an extra piece of strength so that the bag doesn't fall through later on and will be able to hold its shape. So you can see that it is being anchored in with 2 more rows of stitching along that base seam. And to veer off from the instructions, we will top stitch the entire perimeter of the base and anchor it into the bottom accent. Now we are going to work on the side seams only one at a time. So you will match up one side with right sides together and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This might seem like a very generous seam allowance, but it's actually going to help give the bag structure later on. With this vinyl, I am definitely using my Teflon foot and am helping to raise the vinyl off the bed of my machine so it doesn't stick. So now you'll see that we are actually sewing the seam allowances down on the side seam so that it doesn't stick up and it's staying flush to the bag. Luckily, we're able to do it with the right sides facing up since we're using clear vinyl and that translucent jelly. You can see the top stitching from here. It's about 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, but you can also do an edge stitch as well. Please pardon the change in fabrics. I happen to not film the second side of the purple bag. So you can see the first side of the tote has been finished, and then we are going to clip the second side. I like to always start where the 2 vinyls meet and then work out toward the edge. Then we're going to again sew with that 1/2 inch seam allowance, backstitching well at the start and the stop of the seam. Now with the second side closed up, we're going to have to really use some muscle to push the bag underneath your presser foot. Take note that the seam allowance has been pushed to the opposite side of the first side seam. This is to make sure that the bag will be balanced. Don't worry about squishing it too much because you can always use a hairdryer later to straighten out any creases. You can see that I am top stitching a little bit differently than the purple version. As mentioned before, I am edge stitching first, and then I am going back and then adding another row of stitching 3/8 inch away from the fold. With the vinyl, it will just keep that side seam a little bit more flat when adding the edge stitch, and then this gives it a nice kind of flat felled look. You can also see that I use a scrap piece of the jelly vinyl as my leveling jig to go over some of those bulky seams. Now we're going to work on the top side of the bag. We're going to take your slip pocket, have it right side facing up against the wrong side of the bag. Then you grab your rolled handles and make sure that the rounded part is facing up. This takes us to step 57 in the instructions through step 59. Make sure your handles have that 1/2 inch overhang for extra strength and also so that it doesn't pull through and fray because you never know what kind of vinyl webbing you're working with. So we are actually sewing this in and not just basting with long stitches. And this is at about 1/8 inch seam allowance. Repeat on the other side of the bag, which just have the handles and there's no pocket. Now we are going to add the exterior band. And this is when things get a little tricky because the band will now be facing outside of the bag instead of inside of the bag, and it's going to help cover up the raw edge of the tote. So with all the wrong sides facing up, pin it all the way around the bag and then sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure those side seams are nested in each other to help avoid bulk. And then just take your time maneuvering through because of course that TPU vinyl is going to want to stick to the bed of your machine. Make sure to backstitch well. But before we finish the band, we are going to box those corners. Make sure you nest the seams together, align the openings just so that you have nice continuity. Again, sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Stitch well over that bottom seam as well too. Now I'm going to go over 2 different ways to finish these boxed edges. This first method is cutting through the first layer that is closest to me, and I'm cutting that seam allowance in half, leaving that second seam allowance fully intact. I'm using some pretty strong small scissors, and then with that second layer, I am going to fold it over and fully enclose that seam. It's like having built-in binding. So with that fold, you will edge stitch it into place in order to cover up the raw edge of the box base seam. Isn't this so nice? This is the way I love to finish all of my raw edge pouches. Now, if you don't like the bulk of the bottom center seam, this is a second method. You will cut your seam allowance in half, then use double-sided tape on both sides. You will cut yourself binding, which is going to be about 5/8 of an inch by the length of that boxed corner, and you will lay your binding across the previous stitching. Then you clip it into place and then edge stitch it, making sure to go just inside of the stitching that had closed the corner. That will ensure that you have sewn through all the layers. Now it's time to flip this lady right side out. You're going to need a little bit of muscle. A hair dryer with a little bit of heat is going to make this much easier, but since this is a large bag, you don't need that much extra muscle. Make sure to push out the corners, and then we begin to fold the band to the outside of the bag. The first thing you're going to do with the right side of the bag facing up is you're going to take the band and fold it to meet the top of the bag exterior. You want to encase the end of the handle and then fold the entire band to the front, to the exterior of the bag. That is going to give you a single fold all the way around the bag. And make sure that slip pocket is still facing inside the bag. So with about a 1/8 to a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the top of the bag. Make sure to take your time. I'm actually going very slow, but you can't tell in the sped up video, in order just to make sure that my stitches are even. From the inside of the bag, you can see that all the layers have been sewn in, and you just want to make sure that the band is all the way folded up and meeting itself. Then continue on to sew the rest of the band onto the bag. Again, this is going to be with a 1/4 inch to a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Sure that your handle isn't accidentally tucked into the bag and that you are not accidentally catching that slip pocket. Make sure it is all smooth and readjust the band as needed in order to get your band as flush as possible. Carefully top stitch and make sure to back stitch well. Lastly, we have the hardware. Make a marking in between your 2 handles on the exterior band, dead center in the middle there. That will be for your snaps, and then also make markings at the opening of your rolled handles. Install with your preferred method. I used magnetic rivet snaps and then just standard rivets for the handles. You can see it adds a really nice touch to your bag and completes that nice finishing. Congratulations on your finished bag. I hope you enjoyed this hack on the Colleen tote. If you have any comments, leave them below.